3 days before our 5th wedding anniversary, I discovered my husband had a secret contract with my best friend arranging exclusive access rights to her body and a payment schedule that increased every year we stayed married. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through the document I accidentally found on our shared cloud storage. Party A James Miller agrees to pay Party B, Victoria Evans, an annual sum of $50,000 with a 10% increase each year of successful marriage to Party C, Emma Miller, in exchange for exclusive intimate privileges. The legal language couldn't disguise what it really was. My husband had been paying my best friend and maid of honor to sleep with him since before our wedding. The contract included a substantial loyalty bonus if I remained oblivious until our 5th anniversary, which was exactly 3 days away. I stared at the screen, remembering how Victoria had been the one to introduce us, how she'd cried tears of joy at our wedding, how she'd comforted me through 2 miscarriages, all while collecting payments for keeping my husband satisfied behind my back. I closed the laptop, my mind already formulating a plan. James and Victoria thought they were so clever with their secret arrangement. They had no idea what I was capable of when betrayed. James and I met through Victoria at a charity gala 6 years ago. I was immediately drawn to his confidence, his ambition, and the intensity in his dark eyes when he looked at me. Victoria had encouraged the relationship from the beginning, telling me what a catch he was: successful, handsome, and most importantly, completely committed to finding the one. Our courtship had been a whirlwind. Within 3 months, he proposed with a 4-carat diamond that left Victoria speechless, or so I thought. She had been my obvious choice for maid of honor, having been my closest friend since college. "You are so lucky," she'd whispered during my bachelorette party, her eyes glassy from champagne. "Men like James don't come along often." I'd hugged her, grateful for her support and for introducing us. "You'll find someone too," I assured her. She'd given me an odd smile. "Oh, I don't need to. I've got exactly what I want already." I'd assumed she meant her successful career. Now those words took on an entirely different meaning. The night I discovered the contract, James came home late, as he often did. He slipped into bed smelling of Victoria's signature perfume, a scent so familiar to me that I'd never questioned why it sometimes lingered on him. He claimed he'd been at a business dinner with clients. It was the same excuse he'd used dozens of times before. "I missed you," he murmured, reaching for me in the darkness. I feigned sleep, my stomach churning at his touch. For the first time, I wondered how much of our life together had been real and how much had been a performance, a necessary inconvenience for him to maintain his respectable image as CEO of Miller Investments. The next morning, I watched him prepare for work with new eyes, the way he meticulously selected his tie, the careful application of the cologne Victoria had given him for Christmas, the practiced kiss on my forehead before leaving. "I booked us dinner at La Maison for our anniversary," he said, checking his watch. "Friday at 8. Wait, or something special." It was also where Victoria worked as a sommelier 3 nights a week, including Fridays. "Sounds perfect," I replied, sipping my coffee. "I can't believe it's been 5 years already." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Time flies when you are happy." After he left, I called in sick to my job at the art gallery and began my research. The contract had been comprehensive, but had left me with questions. How long had this arrangement been in place? Was Victoria the only one? And most importantly, what was the real reason James had married me? I started with our finances. As the gallery's director, I earned a respectable income, but it was a fraction of James's earnings as CEO of his family's investment firm. We maintained separate accounts along with one joint account for household expenses. I had never questioned this arrangement, valuing my financial independence. Now I combed through years of statements from our joint account, which I had full access to. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. Then I noticed the regular transfers to an account called Sunset Ventures, $4,166.67 each month, totaling the $50,000 annual payment mentioned in the contract. Next, I checked property records. Sunset Ventures owned a luxury condo downtown, the same building where Victoria claimed to be renting. A set she wasn't renting. The property had been purchased outright 3 months before a wedding. My husband had bought my maid of honor a condo as part of their arrangement. But the most shocking discovery came when I searched for the history of Sunset Ventures. The retrite wasn't new. It had been established 8 years ago with James and Victoria listed as co-members. Their arrangement predated me. By years, I sank onto the couch, the truth finally washing over me. I hadn't accidentally stumbled into their lives. I'd been deliberately selected, groomed, and manipulated into marriage. But why me? What made me the perfect party, etc.? The answer came from an unexpected source. My father-in-law's recent announcement that he was stepping down as chairman of Miller Investments. The succession plan stipulated that the next chairman must be a family man with a stable marriage of at least 5 years. The announcement would be made at the company's annual gala the day after our anniversary. James needed a wife, a respectable, educated woman who would look good in photos and not cause problems. Someone who would help him secure his position, and Victoria had delivered me to him, perfectly packaged, while maintaining her role as his actual partner. I was merely the facade that made their arrangement socially acceptable. As rage coursed through me, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Let's tomorrow, need your advice on something important." I stared at the message, my mind racing with possibilities. Tomorrow was the day before our anniversary, before the contract's loyalty bonus would be paid. "Perfect timing," I replied. "I need to talk to you too." Victoria chose an upscale restaurant for a lunch date, one where James and I had held our rehearsal dinner. I wondered if that was deliberate or just another twisted coincidence in our intertwined lives. She was already seated when I arrived, looking flawless in a designer dress that I recognized from a shopping trip we'd taken together. I had admired it on the rack, but the price tag had been beyond what I considered reasonable. Victoria had bought it the next day, claiming it was an investment piece. Now I understood where her seemingly unlimited clothing budget came from. Emma. She stood to embrace me, her signature perfume enveloping me, the same scent that had been on my husband the night before. "You look exhausted. Is everything okay? Just busy preparing for the anniversary?" I replied, taking my seat. "James wants everything to be perfect." She smiled, a flash of something satisfaction crossing her features. 5 years is a big milestone. You should be proud." "I am," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose slightly. "What do you mean?" "Oh, you know how it is. Marriage has its challenges," I shrugged, opening my menu. "But enough about that. You said you needed advice about something?" She shifted in her seat suddenly, looking uncomfortable. "Yes, actually, I've been thinking about making some changes in my life. I'm considering leaving the country for a while, maybe a year in Paris. I've been offered a position at a prestigious wine academy there." I kept my expression neutral, though inside I was connecting the dots. The contract would end after our 5th anniversary. When James secured his chairmanship, Victoria was planning her exit strategy, taking her accumulated wealth and moving on to the next phase of her life. "That sounds wonderful," I said. "When would you leave?" "After this weekend," she replied, studying my reaction. "It's all happened rather suddenly." "I bet it has," I thought out loud. aloud. I said, we'll miss you at the anniversary dinner. James has booked Lamazin for tomorrow night. Victoria's smile faltered. Excellent, I've already given notice there. Paul's my last shift, but I'll make sure your wine pairing is special. You always do take such good care of us, I said, my voice honeyed with false sincerity. The waiter arrived to take our orders. Victoria ordered her usual salad with dressing on the side. I ordered the most expensive steak on the menu and a glass of red wine. Speaking of changes, I continued after the waiter left. I've been thinking about making some myself. Really, like what? She leaned forward. Curiosity piqued. I am considering a career change, something with more financial upside. I took a sip of water. Gallery work is fulfilling, but the pay ceiling is frustratingly low. Victoria nodded sympathetically. I've always said you were too talented for that place. What are you thinking of doing instead? I smiled mysteriously. I'm exploring some options, actually. That's partly why I wanted to see you. I could use your expertise on something. Of course, she said eagerly. Anything for you. It's a bit sensitive. I lowered my voice. I've been researching investment opportunities and I came across some interesting documents. I am not entirely sure how to interpret them. Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes sharpened. What kind of documents? Legal contracts mainly. Would you mind taking a look after lunch? Your place would be best for privacy. Victoria hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. Namakar, I could do that, but I am not a lawyer, Emma. No, I agreed. But you have experience with this particular type of contract. The color drained from her face. What exactly are you saying? I maintained eye contact as I retrieved my phone, opened the photo gallery and slid it across the table. On the screen was the first page of the contract between her and James, with both their signatures clearly visible. Victoria stared at it, then carefully pushed the phone back toward me. When she looked up, her expression had transformed from shock to calculation. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Long enough. I took another sip of water. What I can't figure out is why. Why me, Victoria? Of all the women you could have chosen for your little arrangement, why your best friend? She sighed, shoulders slumping slightly. It wasn't personal, Em. James needed someone with the right background, education, family connections. Shevin who wouldn't embarrass him at corporate functions. Her eyes flicked to my stomach, still flat despite years of trying. Or at least someone who was willing to try for them. Each word struck like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. So you handpicked me as the perfect corporate wife while maintaining your position as what? The real partner. It's more complicated than that. Victoria glanced around to ensure no one was listening. James and I have history. We've known each other since we were teenagers. Here's always been something between us, but his family would never accept me as suitable Miller material. My background isn't prestigious enough. My father was their gardener, for God's sake. So instead of finding someone who would accept you for who you are, you decided to install a puppet wife and carry on behind her back. I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. You weren't supposed to find out, she said, as if that made it better. The arrangement was working for everyone. James got the respectable wife his family demanded. You got the wealthy husband and comfortable lifestyle, and I got. She trailed off. Paid, I finished for her. You got paid and a luxury condo, and my husband whenever you wanted him. Victoria's eyes hardened. Don't act so innocent, Emma. You wanted the status of being Mrs. Miller. You wanted the lifestyle, and let's be honest, you've never been particularly passionate about James. How many times did you turn him down in the past year, push him away? Of course he sought comfort elsewhere. I felt a flash of white-hot rage at her attempt to shift blame. So my failure to be the perfect sex doll justifies your betrayal? Both of you lying to my face for 5 years, making me believe my marriage was real? Lower your voice, she hissed, glancing around nervously. We can work this out. What do you want, money? James can pay you off. A clean divorce with a generous settlement. You could live comfortably for the rest of your life. I laughed softly. Is that what you think this is about, money? What else would it be about? I leaned forward. Maybe it's about justice, Victoria, about consequences for your actions. Fear flickered across her face. What are you planning to do? That depends entirely on what happens next. I stood, dropping cash on the table for my untouched meal. Is your last shift at La Maison tomorrow night? I have a feeling it's going to be memorable. That evening, James came home with flowers, lilies, my favorite, another detail he'd carefully noted to maintain our facade of a loving marriage. For my beautiful wife, he said, kissing my cheek, a pre-and-visor surprise. I accepted them with a smile. They're lovely, thank you. He studied my face. Is everything all right? You seem different. Just excited about tomorrow, I replied, arranging the flowers in a vase. 5 years is a big milestone, it certainly is. He loosened his tie. I have another surprise for you. After dinner tomorrow, we're flying to Fiji for a week. I've already cleared it with the gallery, everything's packed and ready. My heart raced. They were accelerating their timeline. Once we were on that plane, the anniversary would be officially celebrated, the contract fulfilled, and James would secure his chairmanship. Then what? An unfortunate accident during our tropical getaway? A tearful Victoria comforting the grieving widower? That's unexpected, I managed to say. What about your father's announcement at the gala? We'll fly back just in time, he assured me. I wouldn't miss that for the world. I bet you wouldn't, I thought. Well, now I feel bad, I said, forcing a playful pout. My anniversary gift for you doesn't arrive until next week? James waved dismissively. You didn't need to get me anything. Having you by my side these 5 years has been gift enough. The practiced sincerity in his voice made my stomach turn. How many times had I believed those pretty lies? How many times had I defended him to friends who questioned why he worked such long hours, missed important events, came home smelling of another woman's perfume? Still, I insisted. I want tomorrow to be special. I've taken the day off to prepare. Maybe you could come home early. We could have a drink before dinner. James hesitated. I have meetings until 6, but I'll try to wrap up by 7. That would give us time for a quick toast before our reservation. Perfect, I smiled. I'll have everything ready. After he went upstairs to shower, I sent a text to the private investigator I'd hired the previous day. Within confirmed dinner plans, proceed as discussed. The response came immediately. All set for tomorrow. Evidence will be delivered by 6 p.m. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. One more day of pretending, one more day of pretending, one more day of being the oblivious wife. Then this charade would end on my terms, not theirs. The next day, I spent the morning at the bank, making arrangements that would later prove crucial. I visited my attorney to update my will, removing James as beneficiary. I had lunch with my sister, hugging her tightly before leaving, knowing that after tonight, nothing would be the same. At 5:30 p.m., the courier arrived with a package from the private investigator and USB drive containing weeks of surveillance footage, bank records, and most importantly, recorded conversations between James and Victoria discussing their arrangement and plans. I plugged the drive into our home entertainment system, queuing up the most damning video to play on our living room's massive screen with just one click of the remote. At 6:45 p.m., I opened the bottle of 20-year-old Macallan that James had been saving for a special occasion, pouring 2 generous glasses. Into one, I added a colorless eau odorless substance that would cause temporary but extreme gastrointestinal distress, ensuring that James would be indisposed during our reservation at Victoria's restaurant. At 7:15 p.m. James arrived home. Looking pleased with himself, he kissed me on the cheek and accepted the whiskey with an appreciative nod. To 5 years, he toasted, raising his glass. And to the truth, I added, clinking my glass against his. He downed half the whiskey in one swallow, sighing with satisfaction. This is perfect, Emma. Thank you for understanding how important tonight is, I smiled. Oh, I understand perfectly. The 5th anniversary is such a significant milestone, isn't it? Kept delay with the chairmanship announcement tomorrow. James paused, glass halfway to his lips. How did you know about that? My father hasn't made it public yet. I know a lot of things, James. I moved to the entertainment center remote in hand. For instance, I know about your arrangement with Victoria, the contract, the payments, everything. Emma, I don't know what you are talking about. No more lies, I said softly, pressing play on the remote. The screen came to life, showing James and Victoria in her downtown condo, naked and entwined on her couch. But more damning than the physical betrayal was their conversation afterward. Is everything set for after the anniversary? Victoria's voice was clear in the footage. Yes, James replied. Once I secure the chairmanship, we'll implement phase 2. Emma's had 2 miscarriages already. The doctors say her chances of carrying to term are slim. It's the perfect narrative. The grieving husband who loses his wife after she struggles for years to give him a child. And the dosage? Victoria asked. You are sure it won't be traced? Completely undetectable, James assured her. Her history of depression and the miscarriages create the perfect cover for suicide. No one will question it. I paused the video, turning to face my husband. His whiskey glass had slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. You were going to kill me, I said, my voice eerily calm. After using me for 5 years to secure your position, you were going to eliminate me and replace me with Victoria. James's face contorted with rage and panic. You bitch. You've been spying on me, ironic, isn't it? You've been monitoring my cycle, my medications, my communications for years, all to maintain control over your perfect corporate wife, never once considering that I might be paying attention too. He lunged toward me, but stumbled, clutching his stomach with a groan. The substance was working faster than expected. What did you do to me? He gasped, doubling over. Nothing compared to what you planned to do to me, I replied coldly. Don't worry, it's not lethal, just extremely unpleasant. By tomorrow, you'll be physically fine. But your career, you'll be physically fine. But your career, your reputation, your freedom, those are another matter entirely. James staggered to the bathroom, retching violently. While you are indisposed, I should tell you what happens next, I continued. First, copies of all the evidence, including your murder plot, have been sent to the police, the FBI for the financial fraud aspects, the board of directors at Miller Investments, and every major news outlet in the country. They're embargoed until midnight tonight, giving you a few hours to contemplate your future. He looked up at me from the bathroom floor, face contorted with hatred and fear. Second, I've emptied our joint accounts legally, I might add, and transferred the funds to a trust that you cannot access. Consider it compensation for 5 years of fraud and emotional abuse. You can't prove anything, he spat between heaves. It's your word against mine. I smiled. Actually, it's your words against you. That's the beauty of having everything recorded. Oh, and Victoria has already fled the country. She booked a flight to Paris this afternoon. Your co-conspirator abandoned you at the first sign of trouble. His eyes widened. She wouldn't. She did paternally. Your relationship wasn't as solid as you thought. She took the final payment and ran. Another wave of nausea hit him, sending him back to the toilet. I checked my watch. I'd love to stay and watch you suffer, but I have a dinner reservation to keep. I straightened my dress. Don't wait up. As I turned to leave, James called out, voice weak and desperate. Emma, please, we can work this out. I'll give you anything you want. Just stop the evidence from going public. I paused in the doorway. You know what's interesting, James? For 5 years, you thought you were the one in control, that I was just a pawn in your game. But the truth is, you never really knew me at all. What do you want? He pleaded. Justice, I replied simply. And after tonight, I'll have it. I arrived at La Maison precisely at 8 p.m., requesting the table James had reserved. The Maperio day looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Miller, your husband called to cancel the reservation due to sudden illness. But we can certainly seat you if you'd still like to dine with us. That would be lovely, I replied. And could you please tell Victoria that I'd like her to select the wine personally? It's a special occasion. Seated at the table James had reserved for our anniversary, I waited calmly. The restaurant buzzed with the energy of a Friday night, couples leaning close over candlelight, friends laughing over shared plates. Victoria appeared at my table 15 minutes later, her professional sommelier smile fixed firmly in place, despite the panic in her eyes. Emma, she said quietly, what are you doing here? Here is James indisposed, I replied. Something he ate didn't agree with him. Please sit down, I am working, she hissed. It wasn't a request. My tone left no room for argument. She glanced around nervously before perching on the edge of the chair across from me. I've just spoken with James, I continued conversationally. He mentioned you booked a flight to Paris for this afternoon, yet here you are, still in town, having second thoughts about abandoning your partner. Victoria's carefully maintained composure began to crack. I don't know what you were talking about. No more lies, Victoria. The contract, the payments, the murder plot. I have evidence of all of it. Copies have been sent to the authorities to be released at midnight tonight. Her face went ashen. Murtail plot. What murder plot? I studied her expression carefully. You didn't know? James has been slowly poisoning me for months. Those miscarriages weren't natural. And after securing the chairmanship tomorrow, he planned to stage my suicide. Horror dawned on her face, genuine horror. Not the practice kind she'd perfected over years of deceiving me. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. That wasn't part of our arrangement, wasn't it? The contract specified that you would receive a completion bonus after 5 years. Did you ever question what completion meant? Victoria's hands trembled. It meant the end of the marriage charade. Once he secured the chairmanship, we could transition to a new arrangement. A divorce maybe, with you receiving a generous settlement, not murder. For the first time, I considered that Victoria might not have been fully aware of James's darker intentions, but her ignorance didn't absolve her betrayal. Whether you knew or not doesn't matter now, I said. In a few hours, everything will be public. Your reputation, your career, your freedom, all gone. Please, she begged, reaching for my hand. I'll testify against James. I'll tell him everything. But don't destroy my life too. I withdrew my hand from her reach. You destroyed my life the moment you selected me as your puppet. You watched me suffer through miscarriages that James might have caused. You accepted money to sleep with my husband. You called yourself my best friend while betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. Tears streamed down her face, Pricier, creating dark rivers on her perfect skin. I never meant for it to go this far. It started as a business arrangement, but then what? You fell in love with him? He fell in love with you, save the romantic revisionism, Victoria. This was always about money and power. She didn't deny it, just sat there broken, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. I leaned forward. "I want you to make a choice, right now. You can take that flight to Paris and try to outrun the scandal, or you can go to the police tonight, turn state's evidence against James, and maybe, just maybe, salvage some small piece of your future." Victoria stared at me, calculating her options. Or he's calculating. "Why are you giving me a choice at all? Because unlike you and James, I don't manipulate people into corners. I am giving you agency, something you never gave me." She nodded slowly, a flicker of respect crossing her features. "And if I choose to cooperate, I'll tell the prosecutors you came forward voluntarily. It won't erase what you've done, but it might mitigate the consequences." Victoria stood smoothing her uniform with shaking hands. "I need to speak with my manager. Tell him I have a family emergency." "Make your choice, Victoria, but make it quickly." The clock is ticking. As she walked away, I ordered a glass of champagne. Not to celebrate, there was nothing worth celebrating in this wreckage of trust and betrayal, but to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. By midnight, as promised, the evidence went public. James was arrested at our home, still sick from the laxative I'd given him. Victoria turned herself into the police an hour before the news broke, offering a full confession in exchange for leniency. The Miller family's carefully cultivated reputation imploded overnight. The company's stock plummeted. The chairmanship announcement was indefinitely postponed, and I disappeared. Not permanently, but long enough to heal, to rediscover the woman I was beneath, the role I'd been manipulated into playing. The substantial funds I'd legally withdrawn from our joint accounts, money that had been partly mine all along, provided the freedom to start over. 6 months later, as James and Victoria awaited trial, I returned to the city, not as Emma Miller, the perfect corporate wife, but as Emma Roberts, gallery owner and art consultant. The scandal had provided an unexpected benefit. Wealthy clients seeking discretion and taste flocked to my new gallery, attracted by my newfound notoriety and independence. On what would have been our 6th anniversary, I received a letter from James's attorney, offering a settlement in exchange for my testimony being moderated at his upcoming trial. I responded with 2 words, because that was the lesson I'd learned through all of this. Some contracts can't be negotiated, some betrayals can't be settled, and some truths demand to be told, no matter how uncomfortable they make those who've operated in shadows for too long. The silent contract had been voided, and in its place I'd written new terms, my own.